have a look. There's short introduction of John Donne, 22nd January and 1572. That's birth year, and its span goes to 31 March 1631. Was an English poet means that he lived his life in England, not in Ireland or USA, etc. Scholar, soldier, and secretary. He was secretary means that he was a court poet as well, born into a Catholic family. So he belonged to Catholic family, not to Protestant family, who reluctantly means hesitantly, and with some or with no willingness, became a cleric, became a Maulvi in the Church of England, although he didn't want to be a Maulvi or cleric. But because of his attitude that was so romantic, and that was quite, you may say, quite paradoxical and opposite to that of a cleric. So he was Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral in London. Cathedral means a big church. So he belonged to the great church, and he was Dean of that church, St. Paul Cathedral. The name St. Paul, one of the greatest muftis of Christianity, you may say, 1621 to 1631. For 10 years he had been the Dean of St. Paul's Cathedral. He is considered the preeminent representative of the metaphysical poets. There are other metaphysical poets as well. You might have done some assignment about metaphysical poetry, but he was the leading figure and, you may say, the pioneer of metaphysical poetry. Without him, it won't have been like that as it is now. Metaphysical poetry. What is metaphysical poetry? There are some characteristics written here, and I have just devoted one slide for metaphysical poetry. And that is highly intellectualized poetry. Number one, there's characteristic. Highly intellectualized poetry means the intellectual people would understand this kind of poetry. Otherwise, a layman who is reading poetry for fun or for some entertainment, he won't understand this kind of poetry because it is highly intellectualized poetry. And intelligent and intellectual people who are quite interested already in kinds of reading, different kinds of reading, they may understand this kind of poetry, and who have the natural bent of poetry, they would understand this kind of poetry because it's it's not traditional one or not orthodox one, but it's modern poetry at that time. So he founded this kind of poetry. He was the first poet to found this kind of poetry. Otherwise, the people won't be doing such kind of poetry. It is why that only the intellectual people would understand this kind of poetry. So that's the first characteristic of metaphysical poetry. That's highly intellectualized poetry, marked by conceits. There's so many conceits there in the poetry, so many metaphors, extended metaphors. Conceits mean extended metaphors are there, and new kinds of metaphors were invented by John Donne. And incongruous imagery, there is no relevance between two images, but he joined and juxtaposed those two kinds of images together in one picture. Two very different pictures are brought together in one scene. So that's incongruous imagery. Complexity, there are so complex verses and so complex poems, as has already been said, that intellectual people would be understanding it, because that kind of poetry was so complex and complicated for a layman. And subtlety of thought, and there was minuteness, and subtlety of thought means complicacies of thought were present in that kind of poetry. Now simple poetry, that's opposite of simple, subtlety. Be silent here, you would pronounce it as subtle, and here you can see subtlety. That's noun. Subtle, that's adjective. That he is a very subtle person, very clever person. So there is cleverness of thought as well there in his poetry. Frequent use of paradox means two different things, opposite things. Paradox means two opposite things are joined together, and that's quite frequent in their poetry. In all the metaphysical poets, this characteristic is quite prevalent and quite frequent, that two opposite things are joined together. and often by deliberate harshness or rigidity of expression. And when they are expressing their thoughts on any topic, on any logical or illogical topic, they are very harsh. Sometimes they are harsh on the sun, and sometimes they are harsh on the matters of love and on the death or some other expressions, but they are very harsh and rigid, strict expressions, not that kind of expressions as are relevant or we relate with poetry. That there must be soft expression in poetry and other kinds of literature, but no, not the case here. Here the expressions are quite subtle, rigid, harsh, and you may say that harsh and hard expressions are used frequently in the kind of poetry. So these are some of the prominent features of metaphysical poetry. That let's revise it. That number one, that's intellectualized poetry because of conceits, incongruous imagery, complexity and subtlety of thought, frequent use of paradox, and deliberate harshness. Deliberate means that they did it by themselves on purpose. It didn't happen by chance or by accident, but they themselves did it with some purpose. That poetry should be complex, it should be harsh in expression and rigid in expression. So these are the main features of metaphysical poetry. Let's move to the next slide, and that's the two lines that I have selected for you from the dream. That's a love poem. Dear love, for nothing less than thee would I have broke this happy dream. Now the situation is this, that his love, his beloved, is before him in the morning, and he says to her that, dear love, for nothing less than thee. If there would be any other person, that would be my closest friend, or if there would be my father or mother even, they are less than you, because everyone in this world is less than you. There is no one who is more important than you, my beloved, because it's a love poem by John Donne. So here he says, dear love, for nothing less than thee. Everyone is less than you, less than thee. So if anyone would be here in the morning time, I would not break my dream for him or for her, whether it be my friend or some close relative. Would I have broke this happy dream? So it simply means that I wouldn't break my dream if there would be any other person. It's you, so I have broken my dream and I have awakened myself. And the reason in the next lines he presents, that is that I was seeing you in my dream, and in my dream you were there, and in real life when I am awakened, that's you before me. So in all the moments of my life you are there for me. It is why that there is no difference between my dream and if I am out of dream. The same is the condition, because everywhere I can see you. So that's the very Sufi kind of representation of love or interpretation of love here, that you see that in my dreams and in my awakened form you are everywhere. So that's the gist of our essence, or the main idea of the dream. That's one poem, and let's start the next one. And what does he say here in the canonization? One of Donne's most famous poems, the canonization, is a love poem. You know what's the meaning of canonization? Canonize means that to pronounce that this person is a saint, is a wali, is a great Sufi. So to say that person, and if he is dead, and to announce and to declare that he was a Sufi, he is a great man, he was quite near to God. So that means that you are canonizing that person, that you are making him a Sufi after his death. That means canonization. So it's a love poem. The canonization is a love poem, but like many of Donne's poems, he fuses, he mixes sexual or romantic love with religious motives, with religious ideas and imagery. After all, to canonize someone is to declare them a saint. As I have said earlier, love indeed becomes a sort of religion in itself, a sanctified thing. It begins. So this poem begins like this. For God's sake, hold your tongue, means don't speak please, and let me love, because when you speak there's a disturbance in my love. So let me love and do not speak, shut up. So for God's sake, and God is also there, my goodness gracious. For God's sake, hold your tongue. Keep your tongue silent. Do not speak, because it is a great disturbance in my making a love. So, and let me love. So that's the beginning of this poem, like that. And I didn't write the poems, the lines next to this poem, because you may read by yourself. So let's move to the next one. There's sun rising. The sun rising, there's the representative love poem of John Donne, and we would be reading it here, and there's quite strange expressions you are seeing here. Let's start. Are you ready? Have a glass of water and be afresh and feel afresh, and then come back to listen to this lecture, please. I think you are done with, and you have taken a glass of water or something that's refreshing, as that restore your energy. Although you are pretty young and you shouldn't be feel bored or tired at this moment, because it's just 15 minutes right now. So the sun rising, that's the last poem that we are discussing here in this session. So the sun rising, busy old fool. Oh my goodness, he is speaking to the sun like that. So the sun is before him, and it's morning time, and sun has appeared, and the setting is just like that there is a room, and John Donne is with his beloved, so they are sleeping together, and the sun appears in the morning, because the night has been passed, and that's very tragic. And now the sun is appearing, and now he is saying to the sun, and that's the real expression one can feel when the situation is like that, I think. So busy, he's saying, he's addressing to the sun like that. See the adjectives here for the sun. Have you ever heard this kind of expression? Busy, there's the sun, you are very busy. Old, and you are now old because you are a billion years old now. And you are a fool as well, because you are disturbing us. Busy old fool, unruly sun, uncivilized sun, dirty sun. This kind of abusive language, you must say. Why dost thou thus? Why do you do so? Why do you disturb the loving hearts? Why do you disturb us? Through windows and through curtains call on us, and you are peeping through the windows like a thief, like a stealer, like a dacoit. You are peeping through the windows, and you are calling on us through curtains. You are siding our curtains, our blinds, and you are seeing our ways of love, our privacy. You are disturbing us. So you are old fool. Must to thy motions lover seasons run? Should the lovers' ways, lovers' methods follow your motions, your moves, your movements, that when you would appear and we would stop loving to each other? No, it's a bad thing. The lovers' seasons, the lovers' times do not follow your moves, your motions, your movements. Not at all. We are not bound to you. We are free to love to each other. Saucy pedantic wretch, you are pedantic wretch. You are saucy. Do you know the meaning of saucy? Pedantic wretch, a poor person. You are like a poor person. You are very poor, and you think that you are pedantic, very scholarly, and you go into minute details, and you are saucy as well. It means that you are sexually suggestive in a light-hearted and humorous way. So that's kind of son you are. Go. And now he is addressing to the son in a manner of commander. Go, chide late school boys. So the son, you should go and chide and condemn late school boys, because they are late from the school. So awake them, rise them, go there, because they are getting late for their school. You are for the late school boys, not for us, for lovers and for apprentices. If there are some trainees or apprentices who are doing apprenticeship, so go there for the trainees and get them to work and say them that it's morning time and go to your work, go to school, go to apprenticeship. But you should not disturb us, the lovers. Go tell court huntsmen and go to the court and go to the hunters that the king will ride and rise them, because the king won't be waiting for the huntsmen or hunters and get the horses ready for the king. So go there, call country aunts to harvest offices and go to the aunts, because their harvest waiting for them. Love all alike, no seasons knows nor clime. We are lovers, and love do not know any kind of time or morning or evening or night or like that, and you are making us scary and you are making us fearful. Or do not do so. Go. Nor hours, days, months, which are the rags of time. These are just the rags, bad things of time. And we don't follow the hours and days and months, because hours, days and months have been set by the sun itself. So he is addressing that we don't follow the hours, days, months. So these are the rags, minutes of time. These are the moments of time, and we do not follow any kind of time, we the lovers. So you should go to the apprentice, to the trainees, to the apprenticeship boys, and to the late school boys, and to the arts, and to the animals, and to the court servants. Go there, and because they follow time, they follow you, that it's morning time and wake up and we should go to college and university and school. But we the lovers do not follow any kind of time. This kind of poetry that you have read, and you have got the idea that what kind of poetry this metaphysical poetry was, and it's quite different from other kinds of poetry. So this is the love poems from John Donne, and you may have some idea of these love poems, what kind of poems they are. So different things have been brought together, and a very element of strangeness is the most important feature of the poetry, in fact. That there is an element of strangeness, that strange ideas have been presented in the poetry, like the dream, the sun rising. Now these adjectives were quite unknown in English poetry or any other poetry, any other languages poetry. That's quite unknown, that someone is addressing to the sun in this manner, that busy old fool, unruly sun, and like that. So the beginning of these poems are quite abrupt, quite sudden, that he starts his talk without presenting any kind of prelude, or the beginning lines the other poets do, that I am starting some kind of a poem like that, but he doesn't do so. He just presents the lines and starts the poem abruptly. All of a sudden his reader is shocked that what is he saying about the sun, or what is he saying about the canonization, or what is he talking about the dream or valediction, or like that. And similar is the case with other love poems. So up till now I think you have gathered a lot, you have got a lot from this session. That's all about the love poems by John Donne, and that's the last thing that we are discussing here. This is how one of Donne's most celebrated poems begins. So it's a very glorious and frank manner. It begins on chastising the sun for peeping through the curtains. So it's all about what we have talked about. Read it by yourself. I think it won't be quite difficult for you. There's one thing that T.S. Eliot said about him, that thought and feeling were united in Donne's poetry. Thought and feeling, that there is feeling, emotions as well, but there is also an element of thoughtfulness. And that's not thoughtless poetry, but it invokes, it evokes, and it motivates us to think as well. If you allow me, then there is last poem, if you allow me. If not, you can skip it as well, because that's all that we have done. That's enough. But if you allow me, or there is some time for you from your side, then we would be reading it for in just 1 minute, 2 minutes. The Ecstasy, a very, very famous poem by John Donne. So this love poem, have some lines. We are like a pillow on a bed, a pregnant bank swelled up to rest. That they are both lovers are on one bed, and like a pillow, the one side of the bed is higher than the other, so that's like a pregnant woman. So you see that two different things have been joined together. There's the disharmony of images. The two different kind of images are put together. Like a pillow on a bed, they are on the bed, but like a pillow, a pregnant bank swelled up. Like a pregnant woman's belly has been swelled up, so the pillow is swelled up, and the bed's linen has been swelled up to rest while its reclining head, because your head is there. Sat we two, and we are sitting together on the bed, one another's best, and the angle of these two lovers are like that. Our hands were firmly cemented with a fast balm, so there is a sense of serenity and calmness here. And our hands are firmly cemented. They are cemented. They are joined with cement, that they cannot be separated. Within the spring, and there is a spring. There is a river of love. Our eye beings twisted, and our eyes are into each other, and it thread our eyes upon one double string, and it seems that there is a double string you string it. There are two threads, and you string them, you join them together, and they are one. So similar is the case with our eyes, that they are stringed together. So this strange kind of poetry they did, that kind of love poems. So that's 1 or 2 minutes for ecstasy, and there is an ecstasy. There's a poem in Urdu as well by Parveen Shakir. You may read that in her Khushbu. That's first collection of his poems and ghazals. That was the Khushbu, and you may read this poem Ecstasy there. But that's kind of different ecstasy. But she has taken the idea from John Donne, because she was masters in English as well. So that's all from my side. Thank you so much, my dear students. Stay happy, stay blessed. Just give a smile and end this session. Thank you so much.